everyone, welcome to DIY with Nancy. Well, I have a special one for you. In the next 3 days, I'm going to show you, along with my family, how to make my mom's recipe for Portuguese chouriço, chouriços Açoreanos. It's a very delicious chouriço. I won't have any other one, not even a store-bought. My mom made this when I was growing up, at least a couple of times a year, and she's been making this for a very, very long time. And I was very happy and fortunate that she's passed on the recipe to me, and now I'm going to share the recipe with you, and I hope you stay with me to watch how to make chouriços Açoreanos, Portuguese chouriço, step by step.
The first step is to take a pork shoulder. So you buy pork shoulder, we ask the butcher to debone the pork shoulder and remove the pig skin. Now, as you can see, the pork shoulder has some fat in it still. So I'm going to remove the majority of it, but I'm going to leave some behind because that's what gives the chouriço some flavor. Now next, all I'm doing here is cutting the pork shoulder meat into smaller pieces. Eventually, I'll be cutting them into bite-sized pieces so it fits into the casing. And now that I cut the meat into long strips, I'm now cutting them into small cubes or bite-sized pieces. And you can see that there's some fat there as well. Now I have the quantity of 18 pork shoulders at approximately 11 pounds each for a total of just over 200 pounds of pork meat. I'm going to continue cutting them and placing them in a bowl, a larger bowl, and eventually adding it all together. Now you can see that the family is all together. I have my brother on the left, my mom on the right, my nephew, my sister-in-law, and we have more family coming to help. So we're going to have this done in no time. Now once we have all the pork shoulder meat cut into small cubes, we place it into a big panna. Now here's the pork skin, which we're going to be smoking into the smoker later on to sing. Here are the bones from the pork shoulder that's been deboned, and we kept them so we can make a Portuguese cozido, a Portuguese boiled lunch. And of course, I'm not going to leave you out. I'm going to give you a glimpse of us making cozido later on in the video. Now, you could buy cloves of garlic already peeled, but my mom likes to do it the old-fashioned way. So here we are preparing the garlic, which we're going to be using a lot of, and chopping it into the food processor into smaller pieces, just as we're doing here. So the garlic will be chopped in small pieces, just like this. Now for the ingredients, we're going to be using ground black pepper, chloral, which is paprika, and we're using the sweet paprika, garlic powder, yes, more garlic. We're going to use red wine, pepper sauce, which is a homemade pepper sauce. We call it pimenta moída. We have our chopped garlic. We have the tripe, which is the casings for the chouriço. In Portuguese, we call it tripe. And of course, we need the salt, and I'm using table salt. Now I'll list the exact quantity of the ingredients that I'll be using for the seasoning of the chouriço meat on the description box down below. Now I'm going to start off by seasoning the meat with pimenta moída, which is a homemade hot pepper sauce. Next I'm adding the chopped garlic. Next I'm going to add the salt. This is a very important ingredient. It's going to help cure the meat and flavor it. Next, I'm adding chloral, which is the sweet paprika. Next, I'm adding the ground black pepper. Next, I'm adding red wine. We've added all of the ingredients, and now we're going to mix the pork meat with all the seasoning and make sure it's well combined. Now, before we cover it up, we're going to add the pig skin right into the pork meat and let it season. And we're just going to place that right in the inside. So we're going to smoke the pig skin as well. Now I'm going to add about 2 handfuls of salt, place it right on the top, just as I'm doing here. Now we're ready to cover the meat and let it marinate for 24 hours. And within 24 hours, we're going to check the seasoning. We're going to taste it and see if it needs a little more seasoning. And if it does, at that time, we'll add additional seasoning. The pork meat has now been marinating for 24 hours. We've checked it for seasoning. It needs a little more seasoning. So we're just going to add some red wine. We also need more salt. And next we're adding more pimenta moída, which is the pepper sauce. We like our chouriços spicy. If you don't like them too spicy, then you don't have to add the pepper sauce. And next I'm adding some plural, which is the sweet paprika. And this gives it some color and flavor. Now we need some muscle for this task, and my brother Kevin is doing a great job in stirring together the meat and all the seasoning. Now once we've stirred up the meat, we're going to cover it back up and start stuffing the chouriços tomorrow morning. Now for the next step, before you use the casings, you want to make sure you rinse the casings, which are very dry and they are salted. So you want to run cold water through the casings, or tripe, to have them expand and ready to be stuffed with the chouriço meat. Now that the casings have been thoroughly rinsed through water, my mom likes to add some parsley to the casings, and the parsley has been thoroughly rinsed with water and cleaned. She's going to break it apart and add it to the casings, and we're going to place the bowl in the refrigerator ready to stuff the chouriços tomorrow morning. Okay, it's the next morning and we're ready to stuff the chouriços. I have the casing here, which I'm going to attach to the sausage stuffer. It's my mom's machine. She's used this for years and we're going to continue using it today. So first I'm placing the casing onto the attachment. And at the end, I've tied a knot to the casing so that way the meat doesn't exit the other side of the casing. So now I'm ready to stuff the sausages, and I'm just placing the meat into the sausage stuffer. For this step, you want to try to do it slowly because the casings can rip, and if that happens, it's fixable, but we want to try to avoid that. Now I'm going to continue filling this casing with the chouriço meat so that way you could see what it looks like in the end, and then we'll move on to the next step. Once you fill the casing, you're going to move it aside. I'm going to show you what to do for the next step. Now for the next step, we're going to tie our chouriços and form 4 chouriços. And we're going to start off by tying the end of the chouriço. And we're just using some heavy duty string. And now my mom has a safety pin. It's a large safety pin. She's used this as long as I can remember. And she just pokes the chouriço to take any air that's in the chouriço. And then what she starts doing is she squeezes it towards the end so it can be really full and there's no gaps in between the chouriço. Now we have the chouriços just the size she wants. She twists it around, and we're going to start by forming the next chouriço. And you generally want 4 chouriços in one strand. And I'll show you what I mean, because it's a lot easier to hang on the rods to smoke the chouriços. Now we use the first chouriço to measure to make sure that the next chouriço is pretty much the same size. So generally there'll be 4 chouriços, and you're going to tie a string in between each of the chouriços. And you want to make sure you tie it really tight, because you don't want them falling while they're being smoked in the smoker. So you'll end up with 4 chouriços all tied up together. So much easier to hang in the smoker. You're going to place it on the rod just like that, and you smoke them. So look how gorgeous and beautiful these chouriços look. They're ready to get smoked. Let me show you how to tie the chouriços one more time. Now here I have the pig skin, which has been marinated, and I'm just placing it on a hook so we can place it in the smoker. Now for the next step, smoke the chouriços. And here we have steel rods, which we're hanging the chouriços, and you can see they're in 4 and really easy to hang onto the rods. And we have my brother Kevin and my cousin John, who's in charge of smoking the chouriços. Montagem de vergonha de cenouras para quê?
Para fazer um cozido à moda portuguesa.
O cozido é tão bom.
Mussarela, chouriço, ossos de porco, carne de vaca e galinha.
E tu sim, já vai
E tem sim, para mim consolar comer.
A gente chama chouriços, mas a gente chama chouriços, mas à moda de quê?
À moda de São Miguel, que é chouriços açoreanos.
Já há quanto tempo que a gente está a fazer? A minha mãe faz chouriços.
Há mais de 40 anos. Já é solteira, fazia a casa dos meus tios e da minha avó.
E quem é que ensinou a minha mãe a fazer?
Já aprendi na casa da minha família. Não foi dos meus pais, foi da minha avó, dos meus tios, foi de onde aprendi a fazer isto tudo. É fácil isto tudo, foi já de Portugal.
Aqui no Canadá, quando a gente está a defumar os chouriços, a gente faz no fumador.
Yeah.
Lá em Portugal, como é que a minha mãe fazia?
A gente lá em Portugal usava as chaminés no canto das casas, que era o pé dos fornos. E a gente fumava era dentro de casa, a gente estava os defumadores por lá acima pela chaminé e a lenha a trabalhar, o lube, para defumar os chouriços em cima. Levava 2 dias, 3 dias a defumar aqueles chouriços. Porque a gente, quando ia cozinhar, a gente punha a lenha e a lenha punha a defumar os chouriços. Aqui é nos defumadores lá fora na rua.
Muitas pessoas perguntam de onde é que a minha mãe é em Portugal.
Eu sou de Ponta Delgada, da terra dos Arribes, perto de Quartel.
Hello. Hi.
Ai!
The chouriços are now ready. We're removing them from the smoker. They've been on a low to medium heat for approximately 2 to 2.5 hours. We're now going to leave them on the rods and let them cool for at least half an hour. The chouriços have been cooling, and we're now ready to take them on inside and get them cleaned up and packaged. Look at the chouriços. They look perfect, and they're so delicious. This recipe made 240 chouriços.
Come on, let me try.
How is it?
Good.
Beautiful.
Ja, bei uns Salz nicht abhaben.
Wie schmecken das auf Fisch? Ne?
Tastes good, Fatima?
I went to salt. You're gonna eat this all by yourself, are you?
Oh my gosh, so good. These guys are gonna finish it off. Enjoy. Now here is the smoked pork skin, one of my mother's favorites. In Portuguese, we call it chouricos, and we're now ready to get them packaged. Now for the next step, before we package the chouriços, we're simply cutting the strings from each individual chouriço, just as we're doing here. And for the last step, we're going to roll the chouriços in butcher paper. That's what we're using here. But you can also vacuum pack the chouriços or place them in Ziploc bags. Once the chouriços are packaged, you could place them in the freezer and take them out as you need them.
And there you have it, everyone. That's how we make our Portuguese chouriço, Açoreanos. I want to thank my mom and my dad for showing us this recipe throughout the years. I want to thank my family who's helped out in the last 3 days. I just want to also give you a few tips. On the second day, when you're mixing the meat and you're checking it for seasoning, you could just take a little bit of the meat and place it on a skillet, fry it up, and try it for the seasoning, taste it for seasoning. And at that point, if you feel it needs a little more seasoning, salt, pepper, hot sauce, or pepper sauce rather, some wine, at that point you would add it in. Now, if you don't like your chouriços spicy, you can eliminate the pepper or the pimenta moída pepper sauce, and you know what? You can make it your own. Anyway, thank you everyone for watching how to make Portuguese chouriços, Açoreanos. I hope you like the recipe, and if you did, don't forget to like and subscribe. And until next time, everyone, thanks so much for watching. Take care.